All right. I think that's enough time waiting for everyone. People can continue to join as we're talking. Um, I want to welcome everyone to the April 1st, 2025 uh, briefing on snowpack and water conditions around California and the Western U.S. I'm Andrew Schwartz. I'm the director of the UC Berkeley Central Sierra Snow Laboratory. You may or may not be curious about why it says Barbie Edition on the bottom of the slide. That's because as of this morning, we decided that we will be moving on from being the Central Sierra Snow Lab and instead will be the basic research, basic atmospheric research on basin inflow efficiencies project, or Barbie. Also, that's
Mhm.
April Fool's. So welcome, and we will go ahead and get started on this thing. I'm going to go ahead and do this. It is Barbie Edition only in name, but from Barbie Land, we'll go ahead and get started with what we saw this morning, and that's that we have a wonderful 17.9 inches of new snow in the last 24 hours. That brings our storm total here to about 25 inches, maybe a little bit more than that. I think we had a couple inches the first day too, so around 25 to 27 inches. And it's been terrific seeing this amount of moisture coming in right on April 1st, and a little bit beforehand as well. That this moisture does, if you look to the bottom right here, bring us up uh, above average for median snowfall to date, and median precipitation to date. But you'll notice if you look at those top two numbers on the right, 97% and 86%. 97% is actually a good one, right? That's our percent of median snow water equivalent to date. However, that 86% of median peak SWE, that's kind of where the real story lies this year. I'm switching over now, and we can see that graph of our snow water equivalent a little bit closer. We have our blue line, which is our median throughout the year, and then we have our red line, which is what we're seeing this year. But we never really got to our peak snow water equivalent that we would ordinarily expect on March 15th here at the Snow Lab. So ours occurs a little bit earlier than other parts of the state, but we fell a little short. We're still a little short. We're only at 86% of that. Because of these midwinter melt periods that we've had all year. There was a big one at the end of January. We've had another couple periods in February and March, right before this storm took hold. And so we've had a decent amount of snow come in. A lot of rain has meant that even though our overall precipitation is at 108%, our snow is only at 103%. And then also those midwinter melt periods mean that we're a little bit shallower on the snowpack than we would be had all those storms come in cold. That being said, this storm was a cold one, and is a cold one. And it has done some great things for our snowpack. It's nice and bright again, nice and bright white colors. The other thing that it's done is if you're a skier or snowboarder, I would encourage you to get up because conditions are fantastic today. Um, but if we go on and look at kind of the conditions over what we've had going on at the lab on this tab on our website, uh, air temperature and dew point temperature, it really began cooling off yesterday, and we haven't really come up again from that. We kind of bottomed out this morning, just under 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And that means light, fluffy snow, something we don't get a whole lot of up here. Prior to that really switching over, yesterday we saw a lot of grapple, a lot of snow pellets, and even some, or excuse me, snow grains, and even some ice pellets in there. But a very cold storm. Winds have subsided substantially. Yesterday, we were seeing some pretty significant gusts. I know there were a couple trees that came down around the summit, but those have subsided pretty well. The thing that we have seen is we have our stream height that has returned more or less to kind of a normal height right now. But it was picking up quite a bit leading into this storm. So general conditions are looking pretty good. We're expecting this storm, as I'll speak about in a little bit, but this storm's going to kind of peter out overnight tonight, and then it's going to become a lot more dry for us. The nice thing is we are seeing some pretty good distributions of snowfall around the state from this one. It tends to be heaviest in the central and northern parts of the state, as you can see from the 48-hour snowfall plot on the right-hand side. But even down south, we're seeing some snowfall as well. So a good late season storm overall. As far as where we're sitting, again, we are slightly above average for our snowfall at this time of year by about 11 inches. And we average about 360 overall. So we're definitely getting close. We definitely start to really see a taper off in our snowfall in April. That said, we did see our snowiest day of the year on our last snow day last year, which was May 5th. And so we can see some of these storms stretch a little bit later into spring and summer, but it's likely that we'll be tapering off after this one. Looking around the state, snowpack conditions have kind of, they're mirroring what we've seen all year, and they've kind of been in the same distribution where the northern parts of the state are seeing this 118% or well above average. Central Sierra are more or less close to average, and then Southern Sierra are a little bit lower. We did have some March storms that came in that brought the Central and Southern Sierra back in alignment with each other, which was a good thing. This storm has targeted us up north and in the central regions a little bit more, which is why we're seeing that same distribution from before returning. The nice thing that we're seeing now, of course, April 1st, right? This is our most important measurement of the year in terms of our 260 some snow courses across the state. And this plot is actually generated from automated stations, the statewide monitoring network. But what we're seeing is roughly the same, and that's that we've got 96% of our April 1st average around the state. And no, it's not average or above average, but 96% coming off of two above average water years, one that was very large, is just really great. And we are expecting more snow from this storm over the next 12 to 18 hours. So we'll see where that number sits tomorrow, but sitting in pretty good conditions statewide overall. Compare this even to a couple weeks ago, back on the 18th, and April 1st average, we've come up 2% since then, right? So we have had some melt, but we've made up for it, which is a really good thing. And then we started the year decently. Beginning of February, we had been in a position where we were looking at 3 dry weeks in a row, and coming out of that was only at 45%. So we've come a long way, and this water year has ended up being quite good overall. Again, I think, every water professional wants to be at or above average every year. We know that doesn't happen, but 3 years in a row where 2 are at or above and the third is close is absolutely fantastic. Moving on to how this looks compared to a few other years. We'll throw in water year 2023 here just to have fun. But we're looking quite good. These are plots of percentage of April 1st throughout the year in the various regions, north, central, and south, and then the statewide. And we can see this skinny little sad blue line on the bottom. That's 2014, 2015, the lowest year on record. By comparison, I just put this green line on here, which is water year 2023 or the winter of 2022 and 2023. So quite large that year. But still, we have this fat blue line in the middle, which is the current water year, sitting just about at the top of that light blue, kind of sky blue shaded region. And that's our average snow water equivalent across the course of the year. And what we would expect it to do in terms of April 1st average. So sitting pretty good. There's not a huge amount of deficiency. This has been a recurring thing that I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks now, and that's the water's there, but warm temperatures in the future are the big concern now, because if the water's there and we can be melting it off, we're not going to have a lot of concern as far as our water resources are concerned. But the bigger picture, and when you zoom out, is things like the ecosystem and fire danger. And if we have warmer than average temperatures going later into the spring and into the summer, that's when we start to become a little bit more concerned about wildfire dangers. So that's kind of what we're looking at now. Plenty of water for our uses for the most part, but definitely want to make sure that it stays around as long as possible. So, as I was mentioning, we're in a good spot. We have above average storage on our reservoirs. This is from yesterday. Above historical averages on, I mean, this hasn't changed a whole lot on almost all of them. And the others that aren't are very close to their historical average. So, that 4% that we're off right now, let me make sure yeah, 4% that we're off right now, or that 4% that we're away from our April 1st average can be made up for by the additional storage in these reservoirs when we talk about our purposes. And the kind of caveat to that is that we want to keep as much of this above average storage in these reservoirs as long as possible. So if we were able to have an average or above average year again this year, that would help us do that and bring it forward to maybe a larger drought year in which we don't have the ability to make up for just a couple different percentage or a couple percentage points instead of, maybe we're at 65% of April 1st. But still sitting in good position. I feel like this is kind of a boring briefing because it's all about how good things are. If we zoom out to around the Western U.S., very much the same with a couple caveats. There's a lot of water along the Rockies. But once again, this has been a pattern we've seen all winter this winter. Down south into southern Utah, southern Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, that's where we're really hurting for water. This graphic, for those that haven't seen it before, show each one of these dots is what's known as a snow telemetry or a snowtel site that is automated and makes a lot of different measurements. On the left, you can see what what colors coordinate to different percentages, with blues being greater than or equal to 150%, dark blues, I should say, and anything over really 100% or close to average is going to be green or blue. And then as we get lower and lower in the amounts, it goes from yellow to orange to red. So we want those greens and blues. And for the most part, we do have them. Again, there's a few areas that don't, but if we look at the basin conditions around the Western U.S., pretty good year of water. Eastern Wyoming looks to be in a bit of a deficit. And again, down in the southern regions here, not looking great. Some of these areas are really hurting for snow. But this kind of mirrors the precipitation pattern that we've seen a lot this winter. And that's that the heavier storms have been going to the north and haven't necessarily been impacting the southern portions of the country quite as much. This was the way that we started the year. And then in terms of us here in California, the storm track started to sink a little bit down, and the central and southern Sierra started getting more snow, but it's kind of pushed back north again. So just kind of this distribution is more indicative of the precipitation patterns that we've been seeing this year for sure. So moving on to what we're experiencing now. Again, we've had a little over 2 feet of snow so far with this storm. It looks like through late tonight, we could be looking at another foot or so. If we subtract away the snow that was here when we first started doing the collection this morning, there was about 7 to 8 inches there. So yeah, we're expecting somewhere between, I would say, another 6 to 12 inches this afternoon and evening of light, fluffy snow. After that, though, we do start to dry out, and I'll switch plots here. So this is our precipitation type plot. If you see light blues, dark blues, kind of down to magenta, pink colors, those are snowfall. Darker colors and magentas generally mean heavier snowfall. Greens and rain. Greens mean rain. Yellows and oranges are heavier rainfall rates. And then anything that's kind of either a red or a purple is going to be a mix of both. So we see this storm continue through later tonight. That's 11 p.m. tonight. Starts to move out. We will see a little pulse on Wednesday, tomorrow, just a few snow showers here and there. But then we really do start drying out, and we don't see much moving forward for the foreseeable future for the most part. Maybe a few things early next week, but nothing widespread from the looks of it. So this looks like, at least for the time being, this is kind of the last big storm. Again, we do get the occasional big storm in April or even May, so we may see that happen beyond April 15th, which is what I'm currently showing you on this plot. But for now, this is probably the best one we're going to see for at least the foreseeable future. And this is a plot from our friends at the University of Utah. I would encourage folks to check this out. This is a really awesome product that they've made, and it's terrific because they'd selected the closest model grid point to the snow lab itself for this. But on these plots, I think I've described them before, but on the top left, we have accumulated precipitation into the future that's forecasted. We have on the right, we have accumulated snowfall in inches that's forecasted. And uh, those are both in inches. And these are what we call ensemble models. So they're not a single individual model run, which is why you see so many different lines. It's kind of similar to when you look at, say, a hurricane track and they have that big wide cone. That's all the different potential tracks. These are kind of the different potential forecast situations for our snowfall, if you will. And then the thick lines are the averages of each. So GEFS is the ensemble for the American model. The ENS is the ensemble for the European model. And you can see that those averages are pretty close, actually, at 22 to 23 inches through today. That being said, this was initialized at 0Z this morning, which was actually late yesterday afternoon or early evening our time. So most of this has already fallen, probably only looking at another 6 to 12 inches, as I mentioned before. But the nice thing about these plots is as you move down, you can get 6-hourly snowfall accumulations if you want to look at those. What I really enjoy is looking at this wet bulb 0.5 degrees Celsius level. So they've shaded any elevation below where the lab is at in this brown color. And if this wet bulb violin plot is below that level, that means that it's going to be snow at the snow lab. If it's above it, it's going to be rain. If it's sitting right on it, like say 0Z on 6th of April, that means it could be either one. So this has been a nice tool to have to try to determine whether or not we're seeing rain or snow this year. And then for this storm, the all-important snow to liquid ratio, which is the amount of snowfall that can come out of the air for every 1 inch of precipitable water. Air temperature has a very heavy impact on this. So colder storms, lighter, fluffier snow, and snow to liquid ratios of like 15 to 1. So 15 inches to 1 inch of liquid water. Whereas our climatological average here at the lab is 9.6 inches of snowfall for 1 inch of water. So that's our Sierra cement that we're also used to. But again, this shows very much the same thing. Kind of a taper off here overnight, maybe a little bump tomorrow with a couple things coming through. But for the most part, drying out pretty significantly in the future. So, as I was mentioning, we want to keep the snow around. Unfortunately, if we look at NOAA's seasonal forecasts, and that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. So this is our seasonal temperature outlook as we go into late spring and early summer. This is April through June, and anywhere with these oranges, effectively yellows, oranges, and then red is going to be a chance of being above average temperatures. So anything that's darker has a higher likelihood of being warmer than average temperatures over that period. Anything that's a little bit lighter is less. And then, of course, clear is equal chances, as you can see, kind of up over the Dakotas and Wyoming there. So we do have at least a chance, a likelihood that we will be above average in temperature as we move into the summer, likely meaning that we'll see early snow melt. It's not necessarily surprising given the fact that we had temperatures in the mid to upper 60s here at the lab last week before this storm system moved in, but still not something we want to see when we want to keep the snowpack around. Moving on to our seasonal precipitation outlook, it looks kind of the same. As I've been talking about, we have a drier period coming in after this storm. The storm packed quite a wallop, and I guess it stole a lot of the moisture from the future. Not literally, of course, but we have a decent chance of being below average as far as our precipitation is concerned into April, May, and June. So, not looking terrific as far as keeping the snowpack around or getting additional snow or moisture to replenish it. If we push out a little bit further towards May through July, all of a sudden things get really intense with how much of the country looks like it's going to be above average temperatures, particularly the Four Corners region. Not a great way to start your summer if you want to avoid smoke. Luckily, we still out here along the West Coast and in California look like we're going to have a chance, but it's not going to be quite as high as, say, the Great Basin and some of the plains. But we do still have a likelihood or a chance of being lower than average as far as our moisture is gone. And realistically speaking, I think these seasonal precipitation and temperature outlooks often get a lot of flack because they're probabilistic, right? They're not deterministic, and we like deterministic forecasts. But they've done a pretty good job so far this season of kind of telling us what to expect in the near future. If we really look at this summer, meteorological summer begins in June 1st. Well, excuse me. Meteorological summer, June through August, above average for every portion of the country. Fortunately, we have equal chances through most of California for our average precipitation. But we don't typically get a lot of precipitation during the summer anyway, so that doesn't impact us a ton. I guess, the real big takeaway here is we're coming off this wonderful storm system. We've gotten plenty of snow that's come in. We're up to basically what we would expect for the state of the snowpack to be at for April 1st, which is absolutely terrific. Obviously not statewide. That's kind of an average, including here at the lab, but we're in pretty good position going forward. And for a third year, water is not going to be one of those things that's dire. And I think, that's the takeaway. That's what needs to be appreciated is oftentimes we have these discussions, especially in the past, and we're talking about water deficits and how we can make up for those or, what the allocations are going to look like. We haven't had to deal with a whole lot of that over the last 2 to 3 years. And so I think the takeaway here is that we're sitting in another good spot moving forward. And really, anytime that we're able to start talking about more or less the impacts of early melt on the environment rather than what are we going to do without having enough water, I think that's a pretty good year. Not ideal, clearly, but still a pretty good year. So I'm going to go ahead and stop there. It does look like we have a couple things in the chat. And I'll go ahead and go in and look at this. It looks like Doug Fisher had a question. He said when they said 33 to 40% chance of above normal temperature precip, how much above do they mean? So Doug, realistically, it just means in the any above average. Like I know that's not what we want. Again, we tend to want things that are deterministic. So, it's a likelihood of being I think it's a degree or more. But I think it's just any amount above average. If anybody's on that can help me with that one, that's great. But they generally, I don't think the thresholds are too very high for that, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then anybody else that has questions, feel free to pipe up.
Dr. Schwartz, Mike Peckner.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Pretty good. I was going to type this out, but I guess I can ask it. Even though with the two periods of early season snowmelt, the runoff is still captured into the reservoirs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We don't have that's another reason we're not super alarmed. For one, the early season snowmelt wasn't huge. We did have a couple periods, and that water is going down the hill anyway. The challenge becomes if a lot of that if a lot of that moisture goes downhill early, then it can be released prematurely too. Um, these reservoirs, a lot of the reservoirs, the larger ones, are used as flood mitigation as well. So
Right.
if we have melt periods, in March, it's not as big of a deal because we're not really thinking that we're going to have a ton of flooding at that point compared to maybe the atmospheric rivers that come in January and can really thwack us with moisture. Um, but if when that melt does occur, if it goes downhill in say January, there's a lot of it, and then all of a sudden we have a forecast for an incoming atmospheric river that could give us flooding, then that gets released. And so
Right.
ideally, we don't want that mid-season melt um, for a couple different reasons. One, because it can be released. Two, because we'd like it to be up here, to stretch out the snowpack on the surface. But it's also not the end of the world in small amounts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure it does. Yeah, because I know that in early March, both Shasta and Oroville released quite a bit of water, and we saw major rises, of course, in the Sacramento area.
Hmm.
They cut it off, but I know we dumped I don't know how many gallons. I mean, hundreds of thousands or probably millions of gallons before they slowed down the outgoing water from Folsom and other reservoirs.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that's it. It's there's kind of that tightrope walk.
Right.
Yeah,
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
no problem. Thanks, Mike. Dick asked, Oregon coast is red in the basin map, which I've just switched back to. Is that because the coast usually gets a lot of rain, or is there another explanation? Um, looking at, I haven't delved deep. This area has been kind of a problem all year, to be honest with you. Um, I would guess that the station's having some issues. I know that a lot of Oregon, I mean, if we zoom in on Oregon, the entire state's looking terrific. I would assume that's more or less an issue with the station itself than probably being, you know, actually at zero. And yeah, there's only one station in this area, whereas the others have a ton. So I'm guessing there's an error going on at this station, which is why it's at zero. Um, and not so much that it's actually related to rain or snowfall. So I would kind of take that red 0% with a grain of salt, especially because 0% almost never occurs in the water world unless things are super dire, especially when you're surrounded by areas that are all over 100% as well. So that's more than likely just a station failure. Right. Um, I will go ahead and say that I'll hang out for another few minutes if anybody thinks of questions. Otherwise, thank you very, very much for joining me. It's, like I said, been another good water year. If you have the chance to get out and, go play in it a little bit, I it would be a fantastic time to do so. Um, but yeah, if anybody has questions, I'll be here to answer them. And other than that, thank you a ton.
Thanks, Dr. Schwartz, for having these. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Schwartz. Appreciate it. Have a nice day.
You do the same. Okay, so just got another question from Dick Simpson. When does the state report its early April numbers? Dick, are you referring to the snow survey numbers?
Yes.
Okay, so I think they might have done their press conference on Friday because of the weather that was coming in this week. But we can take a look at that. So this is a really easy thing to get to yourself. I would encourage you to check it out if you can. This is something called CDEC, or the California Data Exchange Center, and it has every bit of information that DWR produces. So if you go up here, click on snow, and then come to the monthly snow course measurements, you can click on latest and then scroll. All of these are the individual courses. So if you're interested in individual courses, by all means, take a look at them. But for statewide numbers, you can scroll down to the bottom here, and this is what is being reported right now based off of the snow survey locations. Now, a bit of a caveat to this. The snow survey is saying 87%, right? If we come out of this and look at that same plot that I had up earlier, this is saying 96%. There's a 10-day window that the state allows their cooperators, and there's about 60 of them in this program, to go out and do measurements at these 260 plus sites around the state. And the reason there's that 10-day window is to avoid problems with weather. In storms like this, you can run into avalanche danger. You don't want people going out and doing long treks. Some of these courses are located in places like Mount Whitney, and they can be very hard to get to. So those snow course measurements, the official April 1st measurement, as far as the snow courses is concerned, is 87% because everyone went out last week to do it. And we did as well. We do our snow course at Onion Creek. We did that on Friday to avoid having to deal with this mess of a storm. The storm's been fantastic, but it would have been a nightmare to try to go out and do a snow survey. And now, these numbers, as I mentioned, this is from automated stations, and this is about 260 statewide. There's about 260 snow courses and about 260 surface stations that are automated. This 96% generally is very, very close to what we would see from snow surveys. 1 to 2, maybe 3% at most difference. So it's pretty safe bet to say now, with this additional storm that's come in, even though that was sitting at 87% on Friday or even today, because all those numbers are a little bit older, likely if we redid the survey today and it was a bright blue sunny day and all the snow had already fallen, we'd be somewhere between, I would say, 94 and 98% of average. So they already released those numbers, but you can take a look at them anytime you want by checking out CDEC, and I encourage you to. It's a terrific resource.
Andrew, this is Bruce McGurk.
Hi, Bruce.
They come in after the courses are done, and for the forecast, make an adjustment based on subsequent precip that falls to try to get everything justified to April 1.
Mhm.
So it's quite a process, and there's a lot of manipulation going on in the co-op snow offices.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Bruce is very well versed in this. One of the great California hydrologists, for sure.
Oh,
I'll
Oh,
talk you
cool.
up, Bruce. Oh, okay. So you're one of my favorite California hydrologists, the favorite. No, yeah, Bruce, thank you for that. Yeah, so there's a
Thanks.
lot of tweaking on these forecasts that occurs. Um,
Yeah.
it's never just as cut and straight as saying, oh, well, we've got X amount on this date, therefore our forecast is going to be this. There's a lot of other things that go into it too.
Yeah, how's your power situation, Andrew? I saw several times the website was down and stuff. Is the old generator I bought completely failed?
It's still going. And
Excellent.
we haven't had any power issues today. I think the website had a problem on Sunday because Berkeley IT staff was doing a lot of updates to their infrastructure. Um, and then as far as the webcam being down, I'm pretty sure that that computer just wanted to update itself, and so it cut off the feed for some reason. So I had to update it and start it over, and yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. I'm glad it's functioning.
yeah. Can, oh, yeah, so we've been looking at different statistics. The question is it possible on the 8 a.m. report of SWE and snowfall to include snow depth and seasonal total snowfall as well? Um, I guess so. The big question, one of the reasons that we don't include too much on the 8 a.m. updates on social media is we're often confined by character limits, especially. Um, especially on things like X or Blue Sky. So we're limited on character limits, and so that's why we only put in a couple different numbers. If you use the Central Sierra Snow Lab website, you can easily get the season total snowfall. So go to cssl.berkeley.edu and then hover over the plot at the bottom of the main page, and you can get the season total snowfall from that. The depth, I would encourage you to look at the SnowTel site for the lab, and that's as easy as just Googling CSS space lab space SnowTel. And the first link that pops up is the right one. You can go in there and see either hourly or daily what the depth of the snowpack is.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yep. Good questions today. This is awesome. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and give another 30 seconds just in case anybody else thinks of anything they'd like to ask about. Other than that, thank you very, very much. It's always so nice to have you guys on and to be able to do these. Eventually, we will have to return to some type of you know drought condition report, which isn't ideal. So I think we should celebrate the times when we're able to do this. And thank you, Bruce and Mike and everyone. And yeah.
No, and we'll have a collaboration meeting in August up there.
Yes, yeah. We'll be doing the annual collaborators meeting in August again this year. I'm not exactly sure what date yet though.
Okay. Look forward to
Great.
seeing you.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you
Andrew
guys.
and the crew, thank you for the shoveling.
They thank you for the generator that's still working. You guys
All
have a good
right.
one.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.